For more on this, I'm joined by Cornelia Meyer, economist and CEO of Cornelia Resources. It's so lovely to have you on, as always, Cornelia. Cornelia, first of all, how concerned should ASEAN countries be about the renewed conflict between the US and Iran, particularly its impact on energy supplies and the economy?
They should be very worried. Hello, Leanne, and thank you so much for having me. They should be extremely worried because 82% of the oil and gas coming out via the Strait of Hormuz goes to Asia, not just ASEAN, also East Asia. But they have been really hard hit, and you've seen that their cooperation mechanism, the ASEAN Petroleum Security Arrangements, the APSA, has been devised for decades but doesn't really work. So you have some countries extremely hard hit, like Laos, Cambodia, also Thailand. Others are faring better, like Indonesia, because they get a lot of their oil from Africa, and also Malaysia, because Malaysia produces LNG. So they have actually money coming in. For the others, it's really, really hard in terms of also balance of payments.
And the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is actually arriving in Manila, and he will meet the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi tomorrow. That's on Wednesday, on the sidelines of the ASEAN meeting. Yeah. What key issues, Cornelia, do you think that these two men are expected to discuss? And of course, they're probably laying the groundwork for the fact that President Trump will be meeting Xi Jinping.
I think you just said it. They will be laying the groundwork for the Trump-Xi meeting, but also they will be discussing the South China Sea, because the Philippines and China sort of heavily contest the South China Sea. So they will discuss that. Another waterway that's contested, so another potential conflict. So they will be discussing that, and they will be discussing, the impact of this. Wang Li will really point out the impact of this conflict, not just on oil and gas, but also on fertilizer, food security. And as a member of the Global South, he will point out that this is really, really hard on a lot of countries from the Global South.
And can ASEAN strengthen economic ties with China while continuing to push back against its actions in the South China Sea? How split are the ASEAN countries at the moment, I think, is also another question.
Well, I think they can strengthen ties. And, several of these ASEAN countries are part of the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. So they're sort of, they're in there, they can strengthen it. And I'm quite happy to see that China and the Philippines are sort of in preliminary talks to maybe develop some of the gas resources in the South China Sea together. So yes, they can, and they should work with China. China is a very important trading partner for them.
And let's talk a little bit about the US-China relationship, because how do economic ties with China and security partnerships with the US influence the positions of different ASEAN countries? Because obviously we always see tensions between the world's two biggest economies.
Yes, we see the tensions, and that is really a problem. But the ASEAN countries will have to do what's best for them, and China is their near neighbor. So they will cooperate with China. They also will, especially the Philippines, have started to cooperate much, much more again with the US. So they will try to be at arm's length with both and cooperate with both. And in a rationally thinking world, that should be possible. But the world is not always rationally thinking.
No, it hasn't been rationally thinking for a little while, Cornelia. We can probably agree on that. But let's talk a little bit about President Donald Trump, because he says the new tariffs on Canada are not linked to the wildfires. So we're jumping a little bit to a different topic. But what is the actual reason behind Trump's decision to up these tariffs on Canada? And I think it affects things like hockey sticks.
Yeah, it affects things like hockey sticks. Look, the relationship between President Trump and the Canadian Prime Minister is fraught. So Mark Carney and Trump don't see eye to eye, and so because Trump is so driven by personalities, we have to expect that things like that will happen. I give you another example. The president of Switzerland didn't get along with Trump in a phone call and a year ago, so he upped the at that time upped the tariffs to 35%. They've now come down since then. But a lot of what President Trump does is really personality driven, and how he feels at about any given personality at any given time.
But Cornelia, it's fascinating because you say it's personality driven, but in many respects it will have an impact on both economies, higher tariffs,
Absolutely.
especially because, you know, Canada and the US are basically linked with a border. You know, there's not much room between them.
And they're extremely linked, and they're very important trading partners. And both countries basically depend on each other, and that is absolutely correct. But when I look at the U.S. Mexico Canada agreement, USMCA, I have to tell you that they have really been moving quite swiftly on Mexico, and they seem to be on the right road. With Canada, this hasn't happened yet. And you're right, especially if you are in the automotive industry. These car parts, they get shipped back and forth several times before there is a car actually manufactured. So this is hurting business. But the whole tariff issue has been hurting the global economy.
Liberation Day, it feels like a long time ago, doesn't it, Cornelia Meyer? But great to have you on. Thank you so much. CEO of Meyer Resources.
Thank you so much, Leanne.
Thank you.